Greetings, dear viewer, and welcome to Purposes Crossed, where I hope that people who are called by Jesus for different purposes cross paths and exchange ideas. In this video, we continue with our series of devotions on the Psalms, and today we will deal with Psalm 25. Psalm 25 is an acrostic psalm. The only exceptions are that verse 5 has the line starting with Hey and Vav, and verse 18 starts with Resh instead of Kof. And of course, verse 22 starts with Pei and is actually outside the acrostic scheme. Otherwise, all the verses start with a new letter of the Hebrew alphabet. As someone who writes poetry, I can imagine the effort and dedication required to produce a poem with such structure. Rhyme and rhythm are actually much easier to follow than such structural schemes. What this means is that worshiping God is intended to be a whole person activity, here demonstrated by the use of the intellect to first decide on a structural scheme and then to follow up on it. The superscription of the psalm only attributes it to David, with no indication of the circumstances surrounding its composition. However, the contents of the psalm indicate a reflective state of mind. Yes, David mentions enemies multiple times in the Psalms and also describes ways in which these enemies attempt to thwart him. However, here David pleads more for his safety and protection from the enemies rather than the defeat of the enemies themselves. One major theme in the psalm is that of shame. There are many sources of shame and many kinds of shame. However, in the context of the psalm, shame is that which falls upon a person who has made unwise choices. Therefore, a person who has made wise choices has no reason to be ashamed. It is important that we understand this. It is also important that we understand that this is not some fleeting shame that falls on us as a result of some isolated incident. Rather, this is something that characterizes a person's entire life. The long-term priorities by which I live either give me cause for being ashamed or exempt me from shame. And in the context of the psalm, the single priority highlighted by David is trusting Yahweh. When David says, "Do not let those who wait for you to be put to shame," what do we understand? Simply that in the eyes of the world, waiting on God is a pointless activity. We are told to grasp at what we want and to look out for number one. According to the wisdom of the world, we should be assertive and insist on our rights. At times, we may even need to be aggressive if plain assertiveness proves insufficient. According to the wisdom of the world, we need to place ourselves first and ensure that we do not deny ourselves anything. The idea of rights permeates our world. It is almost impossible to have a discussion about any moral issue without someone raising an objection on the grounds of some right. Does the infant have a right to life, or does the woman have the right to choose? Do individuals possess inalienable rights, or do societies have the right to expect responsible behavior from individuals? In such a world, David points us to a different way, the way of waiting for God. David envisions a slow solution to the issues he faces, as evidenced in his use of the words like teach, learn, lead, and wait. Teaching and learning take time. Leading someone on a path is not instantaneous. David tells us that following the true God requires a commitment of patience. We are expected to join God in a journey that takes time, often years, even decades. And such patient waiting is ridiculous to those who do not believe, and unfortunately also for many who claim to believe. But David expresses immense confidence in God when he sings, "Do not let me be put to shame, for I take refuge in you." David recognizes that the true God is really not interested in making our lives comfortable. Rather, the true God wants to take time to transform our characters. And character transformation takes time, which God then invests in us by his wisdom. And to that is what David calls us in Psalm 25.